Good evening. My name is Christopher Balzano, and you are listening to Tripping on Legends. And how exactly are you listening? I'm not quite sure. As always, we're having technical issues. I wish I had an engineer. I wish I had someone that was directing, producing all of this, but it's just me. And not even Ella's here tonight through a weird arrangement of situations. I'm pretty sure that the midnight.fm, where it's always midnight, feed is not working. But that's a great place for you to catch this show almost every Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern Pacific Time. How are you getting your Tripping on Legends? Are you viewing us on Instagram? We are on IGTV at Spooky Tripping. Are you with Facebook? Facebook is probably the best place to go to because we always have an active chat and we've got people saying whatever they got you, all the interesting feedback from me that I try to address as much as possible, and that's facebook.com/Tripping on Legends. If you are subscribed to the actual podcast of Tripping on Legends, whether you're getting it from iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher, you'll notice that we've been alternating between videos and just straight audio. I finally decided that people are not drawn in by my amazing face, or even, as my Instagram audience will tell you, my face completely obscured by my new microphone to get rid of my speech impediment, or to try to. I figured that the audio is going to speak for itself, and it's interesting because this episode that I'm doing tonight is long overdue. I was originally supposed to do this almost a month ago, and I'm glad I didn't because it got even crazier. And I think it even more needs to be addressed what's going on with the new podcast that's out there. It's actually a radio play, so a podcast play called Bridgewater. Before I get into that, I just want to remind people that season is coming up, right? I am Christopher Balzano. I guarantee you I will never wear a black shirt with the name of my group on it. I will always have IP on it. So tonight I'm rocking my Scream, which I think is one of the greatest slasher movies of all time. But season's coming up. This is the time for pumpkin coffee. This is a time for enjoying all the things that are spooky. This is the time when everyone seems to embrace, or most people embrace, not if you're in Southwest Florida necessarily, embrace the unusual, the dark, the stories that we tell ourselves by campfire that are the bread and butter of Tripping on Legends. I have a ton of events that are coming up in October. Some of them are going to be virtual that I'll be able to kick you guys in on if you are subscribing to either the Instagram or the Facebook. Others are going to be live. We're doing live events again. I'm not going to be one of those people. Every live thing that I've been at in the last 6 months, the person who's doing it at one time goes, "We're doing live events!" What? And everyone goes, "What?" I don't think a library crowd is that rowdy. But I am doing a lot of local events. I'll be doing some in Naples. I've got like 3 or 4 in Naples, including Marco. And I am doing some in Central Florida, and I'm actually going to Northern Florida. Yeah, I've never been there before except to drive through on the way home. Yes, I am in Florida. I've never been to that part of the state, the Jacksonville area. I think that next week's episode definitely has to be some of the places. I want to tell you a little bit more about that event, but I just want to throw that out there that, this is the time where Tripping on Legends acts in some ways as an invite. One of the differences between Tripping on Legends and other shows that I've listened to, because I consume a lot of podcasts myself, is that the ones that I give you, the haunted legends that I give you, are ones that you can go visit. I did a promotional video for the one in Marco, and it was funny because I said, I'm going to offer you a present. Here, I'm going to give you 5 places you can go, kind of like the Haunted Dates episode we did. I'm going to give you 5 places you can go, and you can try to embrace the legends that are there. One of the things that I've always held true to for the most part, is not the prepackaged paranormal. And I think the prepackaged paranormal is fine. I've always said that if I wanted to go to St. Augustine, for example, which everyone tells me that I need to go to, I would go to it to observe how they sell the paranormal. It's big business, and it's big business there. And from what I hear, everyone who goes there has an amazing time, and all those things like that. I could go there as an observer, right? And it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the show in terms of co-hosts, in terms of people who have asked to come on the show, whether it be as a guest or as a guest tripper. And this idea of, and this is tied into what we're talking about tonight, the idea of are we here to, tripping on legends at least, to prove that ghosts are real? Whether or not the story is true has little or no bearing on what we do here. And that aggravates people, that kills people sometimes. I've had a lot of people who have psychic abilities, or who are empaths, or who are investigators, who are eager to go out with Tripping on Legends, or to have me kind of go with them. And I'm always like, the pull to have something proven is not what drives us. What drives us is the impact that these stories have. Yes, in about 2/3 of the places we've gone to, I've had a paranormal experience that has moved me. But it's about the story. And it's about those people who are telling this to their friends, who are then telling it to their grandchildren, who are telling it to their grandchildren, and so on until the nature of the story is so tied into the personality of a place that we can't separate it. And so I am really excited. I have not looked into St. Paul's, unfortunately, since our last time. I've been kind of laying low, and I'm not quite sure about the elderly couple that the person that beheaded the elderly couple. I'm not quite sure the story that you're talking about there. If you can give me a little more detail. But I'm really eager to get out to these new places. I have never been to Marco, and I know that there's a really cool haunted tour out there. I've actually been working with Gina, who runs that. There are some really cool events happening. I want to tell you one. I don't know how many of you are local in terms of Lee County, Collier County, or Charlotte County. But on the 2nd of October, and I get no kickback from this unless you buy a book, so it's not like I'm promoting my own event. There is a a Blair Witch. It's not an anniversary party, but it's a Blair Witch viewing party. First of all, it's gonna be at Nice Guys Pizza, which is amazing pizza. And I am going to, once and for all, get the answer of the connection between the Blair Witch and the Swamp Witch of Sumner County, of Pemberton Ferry. I'm excited just for that, but it's going to be a really amazing event. I've been posting some things about it. I would love to have people come out to that event as well. But I am really excited about going to North Florida, because I haven't been there and I haven't been to the Panhandle, and so I'm interested to see where that's going. I love this quote from John Tunney as well. This is from Tim Weisberg. I once asked John Tunney if a story he just told me was true. He answered, yes, but does it matter? And that floored me. Yeah. And as we always say here on Tripping on Legends, everyone can debate whether or not ghosts are real, but a ghost story is always true, because it says something about us. But are all haunted stories true? So the reason why I was originally going to do tonight's episode as just a straight recording, I wasn't even going to do it live, was this is a sensitive topic for some. And I almost feel as if what we need to talk about, what I need to talk about when it comes to this, has got to be really straightforward and organized. And it's got to be not because it's a sensitive issue in terms of I want to offend anyone. Honestly, tonight, I don't give a shit whether I offend anybody with anything I say. And I also don't think what I'm saying is all that offensive. But I wanted it to be a straight narrative. And then I realized that you, as the audience, are part of the narrative. And so I decided to come on live, and my goal was to make sure that this doesn't become a rant. So I want to kind of set some ground rules for what I'm talking about tonight. If you have not heard, if you've never heard of the radio show Bridgewater, first of all, what are you doing listening to me? Because they are ridiculously more popular than I am. Their statistics are going through the roof. The reviews are going through the roof. They're almost all positive. The number of downloads they seem to be getting dwarfs what I'm doing here. And that's because the people who are putting it together are superstars in this field. Superstars in the paranormal world, not so much superstars in the podcast world and the entertainment field, yes. They are Bridgewater, so if you're not familiar with it, Bridgewater is a radio play about a folklorist who happens to be the worst folklorist in the history of folkloricity. A folklorist who is smack dab in the middle of the Bridgewater Triangle, who becomes ensnared in this murder, supernatural, paranormal whirlwind set with the Bridgewater Triangle behind it. So all of the favorites, if you are a fan of the Bridgewater Triangle in general, all the favorites make an appearance at one point or another in terms of the paranormal and the supernatural creatures. My immediate reaction was absolute disgust. And I want to make sure that tonight isn't that reaction. You know, when I first started doing this, I think almost immediately I was because it came in conjunction with something else. I went on Spooky South Coast. I'm going to post that episode of Tim and I's discussion on this in the show notes, and we talked about who owns the paranormal, right? Who owns? Is there a right to say you claim ownership over a paranormal location, and then by extension, can you own a legend? And it was a really good discussion. I don't want to rehash that discussion in terms of who do you owe things to, right? And then it became, by an extension, right as I was planning on doing this show, Aaron Caju, who made the Bridgewater Triangle documentary, noticed that there was an eerie resemblance to some of the promotional material for Bridgewater and his emblem itself. And then that became a very short-lived internet feud, because you can't win. If you don't know, once again, Bridgewater is produced, it's not written by, although it's produced by and created by the guy who created lore, Aaron Mahnke. So Aaron Mahnke is the person behind this. He has a huge legion of forces behind him who are talented, right? I am not a fan of the show, personally. And I also got into my own match of words with Aaron Mahnke a few years ago, in that I felt his episode of Lore, which was based on, or which featured the Bridgewater Triangle, was just ripped from the research of my friends and I. And that it went note for note, exactly what the documentary covered. Aaron Mahnke has said he's never seen the documentary. He should actually watch that. And that it's not coincidence, but he got it from an article, which, by the way, he doesn't quote the article. That all that shit with Aaron Mahnke and lore and all that is not what tonight's episode is going to be about. It has to get out there. It had to be aired because I am not feeling like about Bridgewater actually being on the air. I definitely shouldn't have been brought in as a consultant or been asked to anything or credited. I mean, this is an entirely fictional story set on the landscape of which I once researched. And no one, in theory, although I'll touch on this a little bit, no one owns that. No one owns those stories. I am not the owner of Puckwudgies. I am not the owner of the idea or at least some of the details of Dark Woods, especially. Like that research is all out there. I did it. I compiled it, but the actual information is the world's. It's the people who experienced it. Aaron put it a good way in a private discussion, which was, when we get this anger, when we get this frustration, it's not because of lore, and it's not because of Bridgewater, and it's not because of book after book after Schiffer book. It's because it's the culmination of all of them, right? It's the shoelace that snaps that freaks you out. And so sometimes when we go on these little rants, it's not because of one particular thing, but it's because of the avalanche of it. But that's not what tonight's show is about. It's there, right? And it's got to be in the background. And for those of you, I would love to hear from people who are in the Triangle or who have researched the Triangle, who are just fans of the Triangle, who have heard Bridgewater and want to talk about the mirror that it holds up to those legends. So if you want to call, if you live in that area, if you're a researcher from that area, please feel free to call 813-418-6822. And I would love to know what you guys think. The second thing, so the second rule, I'm sorry, I was told I was supposed to say the number twice now. 813-418-6822. He pauses for you to get a pen. Does anyone get a pen anymore? That's why you have to be in the chat room, because it's always posted in the chat room. The other thing that this is not about is the quality of the show itself, right? You like something, you don't like something. I always say that's why they make chocolate and vanilla. You may be a huge fan of the format. I'm actually a huge fan of the format. I've tried, fringe Bridgewater Triangle enthusiast. I've tried to write a play. I was probably 2/3 into an amazing, probably not that amazing, radio play that I was hoping that we were going to do on Spooky South Coast. And Spooky South Coast, of course, did a radio play years ago that was amazing. It's a tough medium to work in and have things go smoothly, because everything has to be, because you don't see anything visual. Everything has to be exposition. You can't just... I like strawberry ice cream better than both of those two. You can't... you're limited, right? And so it's a tricky and fun, right? Because we're talking, this was a COVID experiment of people in different locations. Can we just record their audio and get this thing down? So in that way, it's like, hats off. Nice job. I don't like it. I'm listening to it as a professional, a duty almost. It's a duty. Not a fan of it myself, but that's like, I'm not a movie reviewer. I'm not here to talk about whether or not it's any good. My concern, and so we'll launch the discussion based on this idea. Is the Bridgewater Triangle stagnant? Or is it a needle that needs to move? Those of us who have been doing this for years can tell you in detail how the perception of the Triangle has changed over the years. The efforts that people have made to move it certain directions that it hasn't gone, to package it to some degree. And and when I say things like that, I'm not saying it in a negative way. I've got 2 books about the Bridgewater Triangle. Like, I'm selling as much of those ideas as much as anyone else. And we understand that, right? Like, you design something, you have your take on it, you present it, your medium. Like, I don't begrudge anyone that kind of thing. But media, as it extends, moves the needle of our understanding of something. And when it does that, it has a tendency to leave certain things behind and to prop up certain things for whatever might be the narrative that's being sought after for that medium. And of course, the bigger you get, the bigger the medium gets, the more impact that it has. I'm going to tell it really quickly for those people who don't know the story of the strawberries. Speaking of strawberries and the Pukwudgies, I was on a television show long defunct now called Paranormal State, and I was brought in as a consultant to for a case that involved Pukwudgies. And I didn't meet any of the people. I was literally in the Domino's parking lot doing an interview that they then broadcast over a speaker box. And it was edited. It was highly edited. What I had said was highly edited, and I don't just mean it was edited in terms of the length that we talked, because we talked for about probably 2 hours for like maybe a 10-minute segment. They asked me the question of how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie, and I said, essentially, you can't get rid of a Pukwudgie. And they said, well, how about if you plant a strawberry bush? And I went, a strawberry bush? And I went on to why that would be a ridiculous idea, and then I went, but I don't think it can really hurt. So yeah, plant a strawberry bush. And what came over the air was, how do you get rid of a Pukwudgie? Plant a strawberry bush. Like, they edited that out, so, which is crazy. And of course, anyone who thinks that stuff is not happening in media, is completely silly. And that's perfectly fine. But what was funny was the idea that all of a sudden websites and this media started to focus on the fact that to get rid of a Pukwudgie, all you really needed was to plant a strawberry bush. So it was hilarious because the editing moved the needle on that. Just so you know, this has now been completely gone, so I'm going to be able to take away this mic. So now I've lost my little Buki there. My concern is that what they are doing right now on Bridgewater is going to move, it's going to change the narrative of the story, which is fine, right? Like, as a folklorist, you should always embrace the fact, or embrace the idea that things change, right? The story changes. The game of telephone is not just the venue or the vehicle of those of us who have been doing it for 87 years. Not huge, but a very interesting debate was going on between a friend of mine and a academic folklorist. And if you're following the media, you saw some of this idea of whether or not you need a degree to consider yourself a folklorist. And to me, it really boiled down to, and I loved the people's feedback on that idea, to me it boiled down to the idea that folklore, by its very definition, is are the stories of the normal people. Not the academic people, but the normal people. They are the proliferators of it. Folklorists can comment on it. Folklorists can put it in some kind of context. But ultimately, for anybody to stifle how a story changes is not necessarily appropriate. However, and I do want to say, because I feel like I need to say this, there are going to be spoilers in this if you haven't realized it yet. Uh, Jeremy Bradshaw, who is the main character, who's played by, what's his name, Misha Collins from Supernatural, is the worst folklorist in the history of folklore. And I think that rather than getting pissed off at paranormal people like me, folklorists need to look at that guy and start getting pissed at him. If you haven't listened to the show, he is a skeptic. And he's a hardcore skeptic. But he's a skeptic in terms of, like, he does not seem to embrace the stories at all. So he's writing a book about the Bridgewater Triangle. He's teaching at a university inside the Bridgewater Triangle. His father was a cop in Freetown. It's okay if you don't believe in puckwudgies at that point. It's okay if you think that all this stuff is ridiculous. But the level to which his cynicism taints the show is not only ridiculous, it's not in line with his profession. I understand that there's an academic distance that people sometimes take. And what it essentially does, but he's over the top. I mean, over the top. He has almost a disdain for the people who he's studying, which is not good. I agree, right? All the people around him are telling him this stuff, and he's more of just ignorant because he's living in a world where this stuff is going on, and people around him are telling it. He doesn't even want to hear the stories. I don't want to hear it. That's just silly. No. This happened, and you saw this, and I don't know folklorists that are like that. Folklorists come from the perspective of it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It matters whether people are talking about it, right? It matters whether people think it's true. His character does more to just stifle what everyone else is saying about the story. That's the one heavy criticism I have, which, if you want to say that's what sets it like that, once again, spoilers, I think what they're trying to establish, and I'm 8 episodes in, so there's 2 more left, is that he's been involved in the triangle all along, and he's repressing his memories, and that's why he's so much like this. But he wouldn't make it as a folklorist. He wouldn't make it as a writer and a teacher of this stuff if he just demeaned everything he was talking about. Because in doing that, and here's what tonight's discussion is really about, where the teeth of it is. In his explorations of folklore and looking into this stuff, he makes no separation between personal experience and the folklore that might develop around a story. Those things have to be separated. When someone has experienced something, it's not a matter of there's a little bit of truth in every ghost story, or there's a little bit of truth in every lie. That's not what this is, right? And I'm going to use this as an example because I think it's, if you haven't watched Fall River, which is a documentary about the Carl Drew murder case, or the Carl Drew cult case, it was so that I'll come straight out and say it was a horrible documentary. One of the worst documentaries I've ever seen in terms of its tone, in terms of its direction, and stuff like that. I disagree with who it puts forward and the twist ending and all that kind of stuff like that. But that happened. And those people in every other source discussed the idea that they were a group who worshipped Satan and they were criminals. Their crimes were not motivated by Satan. They used it as a way to control. They used it as a way to empower themselves. So the murders themselves may or may not have been part of any satanic rituals or in some kind of religious ecstasy, committed in some kind of religious ecstasy. But though they were, straight out, they were cultists. Fall River does a really forceful hand job of dismissing that angle on everything, including, and this is why if I ever met those people, I would spit in their friggin' face, including demeaning Alan Alves. And when I say demeaning Alan Alves, once again, through a trick of editing, they make him look stupid for everything that he says, and then they pause on him. They say something from someone else. It's like, anyone who thinks this is real, must be out of his mind or not to be trusted. And then they cut to an obviously somewhat impaired Alan Alves, who's going through an obvious medical condition and shaking from whatever this is, and just keep the camera on him as he kind of shakes and looks like he's crazy when it's a medical condition kind of thing. That's friggin' low, right? But here's the deal, and here's why it's important other than defending a friend. The Satanic Panic is real, right? So there were people who, through repressed memories, discovered that they had been molested, and most of it was suggestion. Most of it was people overreacting to the situation. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real, right? That doesn't mean that some of it wasn't real. That doesn't mean the underlying conditions of it were there. When you take, and this is really dangerous, when you take the Satanic Panic and make that a buzzer for any time cult activity is mentioned between the years 1978 and 2003, and say it was the Satanic Panic. Well, first of all, that's not when the Satanic Panic even was, or at least not to that extent. There's evidence of cult activity in the Freetown State Forest. When you take that, and I would love to know, because I don't know this. I have never heard. So I know I have some Triangle researchers in here and some people who are experts in different places. I'm not an expert on the Hockomock, even though people seem to be drawn to that so much. They always want to know about it. Were there reports of cult activity in the Hockomock? Because that would be a really crappy place to have rituals. But so if anyone knows that, please feel free to chime in. You can either call in or just hit it up in the chat room. Much like the Fall River documentary, Bridgewater takes real experiences and real moments and puts them alongside folklore or legends or things that are untrue. And because the narrative is you're through the eyes of the skeptic, real experiences, things that really happened, are dismissed because they're now being held up to a fairy tale. So when you take your life and you put it next to a fairy tale, your life becomes the fairy tale. The fairy tale doesn't become real. And all of a sudden, those things get garbled. Craig Paste, who helped us a lot with our North Carolina stuff, he sent me an article today. And it was about a haunted location that was being turned into a haunted house, like a fun haunted house. And it was designed, or there was music, and there was going to be a concert maybe, by Alice Cooper. And they were essentially taking this haunted location, turning it into a fun haunted house to freak people out and scare people out, scare people around, and then maybe after the season is over, they go back to it just being a regular haunted house. That's an issue, right? I don't know if you guys are following the stuff that's going on, like the Lizzie Borden house and stuff like that. When you take something that's real, when you take something that's, and of course, real in the context of people time and time again experiencing stuff, and you put it next to the cartoonish rubs off on that. Bridgewater has this cult that's in there. There are these two cults. I can't tell them apart. One cult is known as the Gathering, and the other is the Children of Tituba. Now, I don't even want to. We're not even going to touch the idea of a cult that's called the Children of Tituba being involved in illegal activities and borrowing that, because I know a whole bunch of people just north of Boston that would be pretty pissed with that stuff, right? And then the Gathering is supposed to be, I think the Gathering is supposed to be the big part, and the Children of Tituba are the renegade ones who are sacrificing children and stuff like that. The issue with that is they are demeaning actual stuff that happened there, so that it becomes just part of the blur. It just becomes part of the background, the white noise. And so none of it becomes true because some of it is fantasy. It's like the idea that when you meet, I love when skeptics say, I met with this psychic, I proved he was fake, therefore all psychics are fake. How does that logic work? Especially to a skeptic, how does that logic work? Like, I proved one element of something wrong, therefore all the elements of wrong, right? We can't duplicate a paranormal experience in a lab, therefore all paranormal experiences are null and void. The problem with Bridgewater is it is going to become, it's, you know, I see people are talking about TikTok and how that changes the narrative, and I'm actually a supporter of legends evolving that way and folklore evolving that way, because it's reflective of the people. It's reflective of, I heard a rumor, and I'm going to spread this rumor, and that rumor becomes the truth, which, while crappy, is how these kind of stories develop. The difference between that and Bridgewater, Bridgewater is, I'm going to take this narrative, this is the story I want to tell. And I'm going to do a big friggin' spoiler coming up. This is the story that we want to tell. Therefore, we're going to shift elements of the story and bring in things that are not true and not relevant. Not that they're not relevant. They're not documented, and we're going to put it next to documented things. Therefore, I'm watching something. I'm watching a fictionalized presentation of something, and so I stop believing that any of it could be true. Bill Russo, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill Russo in the Bridgewater Triangle documentary had what may have been a Pukwudgie experience. He pauses dramatically for anybody to say the famous line from it, from his experience, because it's so famous, even my sister says it to me all the time. So he's out walking his dog. He gets what is a very, you know, we can talk about Pukwudgies being different breeds and all that stuff, but he comes across someone who says, this little Pukwudgie type thing, who says, "I want you. I want you." Right? And then what was the next part? Cora. But "I want you" is what the, like, we want you. Come here. And it's probably one of the all-stars of the documentary, because I had never heard that story. Bill never shared it with me. And so it was really one of the things that stands out in the documentary, and Aaron Mahnke spends a lot of time talking about it on lore. It is the central point of the podcast Bridgewater. It is chanted and said multiple times, and as people are being attacked, being abducted, what they're hearing is "I want you, I want you, I want you." uh, and to the point of being ridiculous, sure. Drew says another perfect parallel is Andrea Perron in The Conjuring versus her book. And how those experiences change. Now, both of those are tainted by the people who experience them and the motivation for doing them. But either one of those you can take and say, The Conjuring never happened. If I don't think this part of it didn't happen, then none of it happened. Because, once again, there are people controlling the narrative of that. And what it means is, whatever the family experienced didn't really happen. By putting Iwan Chu and making it such a focus of this episode, the friggin' title of episode 8 is Iwan Chu. Before the episode was released, well before the episode was released, Aaron Menke and Grim and Mild were putting out merch. And the merch was Iwan Chu buttons. You could get yourself an Iwan Chu button. If I didn't want to not support them, I would totally get it for my brother-in-law Charlie, because he loves that Iwan Chu. He says it all the time. But it's on their merch, dude. It's his personal story. It's his personal story. It's his experience, right? And they are using it as the plot point of this, and not only because it's ridiculous in the context of the story, right? In that what's going on in it is like, what? But the idea of, if you then, I don't think Bridgewater is going to convince anyone that the Bridgewater Triangle exists. It's not set up that way. It is not. It's not like it's a documentary. It's not like some of the TV episodes they've tried to make, or the special episodes that they've tried to make. It is completely 100%. You get out of there being like, "Woo, that was if you're like it, wow, that was a really spooky thing, or that was a really creepy thing, or that was really entertaining," and then it becomes fictionalized. It's like watching Braveheart and thinking that that's how everything happened, right? Or Lincoln and being like, "Wow, that Abe Lincoln, he really," or Hamilton being like, "Wow, did people really rap back then?" And so no, you don't, right? And so you separate yourself, and it's like, is Alexander Hamilton the person who's presented in the play, or is he really someone else? And ultimately, those get blurred, and whatever the pop culture representation is, whether it's The Conjuring, or whether it is Hamilton, or whether it's Amityville, or whether it's any one of these things, that happens, right? We can allow that to happen, except for the fact that the Bridgewater Triangle represents a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, by not only those of us who documented it, but also those people who experienced it. I would feel, if I was Rousseau, I would feel as if I was being cheapened, right? I would feel the way that I felt for Alan Alves watching that documentary and seeing them just laughing at him on the camera. I can excuse the mispronunciations. I guess I mispronounce things having to do with the Bridgewater Triangle all the time. But the story does nothing to move the needle in terms of understanding. Instead, what it does is it takes a fictionalized world and uses the Bridgewater Triangle as its palette. And when we do that, when we take folklore, listen, there's always a connection, especially when you're talking about, if you're talking about something like John Henry, and you work backwards from it, right? You say, John Henry, there was probably a guy who was really like John Henry. Paul Bunyan is a template or an archetype based on different parts of a real person. every state on the East Coast of the United States claims to be the birthplace or the hometown of Johnny Appleseed. That's that element I was talking about earlier of we have, every story has a little bit of truth to it. And we can appreciate that. We can embrace that. The problem is ghostly folklore tends to go against that goes against those archetypes. It goes against that model. In that, in a world that looks to debunk everything, right, where your greatness is proven by your ability to be able to say why something is not true, and not embrace the fact that, and yet people still say it. When you take fiction and you put it up against personal experience, the person's real life, these are real people, right? Like we talk about this stuff and the difference, the redheaded hitchhiker is a redheaded hitchhiker, right? That is you can believe it, you cannot believe it. People said they've experienced it. Obviously, the New England Ghost Files puts it forward. But we understand that is a ghost story that may or may not be real, right? That like something's going on there. People have had experiences. Maybe they've only had experiences because they've heard the stories before. That's different than saying someone was attacked by a Bigfoot, and that's probably a really good example because my students don't make the distinction between Bigfoot and Candyman, and it's like, well, Bigfoot is something that people have experienced. Candyman's a fictionalized story. Yeah, but isn't that Mothman is Mothman is something that people have been said to experience. No one experienced Candyman. Candyman is a completely fictionalized story which takes elements of other folklore that are relevant and puts it forward. If someone experienced a Bigfoot, you can call them a liar, or you can hear what they're saying. You can call them crazy, or you can kind of put it in the pantheon of other things that are going on. But that report exists. That's something real. Right? I'm once again gonna reference Drew here because it's one of the big reasons why I stopped investigating and I stopped really associating with a lot of paranormal people in that way, is the idea that people's personal experiences is not evidence. It's like, well, first of all, what is evidence really? If a person has lived through something, and you then take that and you put it next to something that's completely fictionalized, and the end result of it, the end experience is everyone going, wah, 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 what a good story. You've now demeaned them. And what more, you've now taken the humanity from that, and you've made something that is real, unreal. You've made it narrative. I remember, seeing it in a book that wasn't mine. I remember my personal experiences in the Charles Gate Hotel being told to me on a ghost tour, and it being wrong. And everyone was kind of laughing and joking and having, oh no, what a great place. Wish I could go in there and investigate. And then you move on to the next thing. And you understand that it's probably all fake. And it's not. Like, no, all that stuff that I'm talking about really happened to me. It was my personal experience, my first-hand experience. My fear is that, much like the strawberry story, people will now be Googling the children of Tituba and the gathering. People will now Iwan Chu will be the call of the Pukwudgie. They say straight out, Pukwudgie. He was attacked by Pukwudgie. He was abducted by Pukwudgies. Both. He wants you. He wants you. That becomes the narrative of it because anything that they're doing is ridiculously more popular and digging a much deeper, long-lasting trench than anything I've done, or heaven forbid, even that Aaron Cashew has done. That will be the testimony to what the triangle is. And that's fine in terms of I don't begrudge someone making art. But the fact is you should either go all fiction or explore it a different way. There's no way to put the toothpaste back in the bottle on this, right? So it's not like Aaron Mahnke's going to be like, well, that Balzano, he makes an interesting point. Because it's already there. There's already an idea that paranormal investigators carry around guns with salt in them to shoot ghosts. That exists already in the belief system of people who are not familiar, that have a passing interest. And that's really what the core audience is of this podcast. It's people who like lore. It's people who like supernatural. It's people who, all right, Malcolm Reynolds is in it, so that's pretty cool. The problem is that this kind of activity doesn't lead to going back and doing research to find out the real stuff, like the real story behind it. Instead, it leads to the narrative changing. So now, much like I just saw something, it was a comic book about the Bridgewater Triangle, and I happened to look at the Pukwudgie, and I'm like, I know of no one who has ever seen a Pukwudgie that looks anything like that. I know of no Pukwudgie kidnappings in the last 500 years. That's going to be the story. And that's my issue with it. Not that the story has changed, but that in the jet-fueled rush to make this a sensationalized story, which moves really slowly. A sensationalized story. They've taken... People have watched American Horror Story, right? And they oftentimes bring in real people or real cases, like the dinner party that they have on Halloween with all the serial killers, right? But you're watching that, knowing that it's completely fictionalized, and knowing the personality of that show, that it's over the top, right? Not to mention the fact, if you're watching that show, chances are you know the stories behind those people anyway. It's not like that. These are not stories that are strong enough on their own or famous enough on their own. The reputation, and Margie, I love the way that you put it, the reputation of the Bridgewater Triangle was built brick by brick by brick, at least in the later parts of it, in the second generation of the triangle, brick by brick by brick, on people's personal experiences and research into the old times. That's not a strong enough house for the wind. I fear that the completely made up stories, the children of Tituba, are going to be the longer, stronger narrative. And more importantly, it's going to be become a plaything, become a joke. And people's personal experiences, the cult activity especially, the Taipaiwonkas, they haven't used the word yet, but they've talked about them a lot, that these will become things of fairy tales. There's a difference between folklore and fairy tales. None of us think that that Little Red Riding Hood was swallowed by the wolf and then disemboweled by, the wolf was disemboweled by the huntsman who then, and her and her grandmother popped up unharmed. None of us think that is real, right? It's supposed to tell you a story. It's supposed to tell you a lesson. Folklore is not fairy tale. Bridgewater is making it that way. And once again, like in all those things that we've talked about, all the examples, the truth and the true people are swept away, and they become the snare drum in this story that maybe has an impact on you, maybe doesn't, but you can't recognize it from the rest of the cacophony. It's all just noise. It's all just a blur. And those are people. Those are people's experiences. I would love to hear some of those people who suffered through kidnappings and murders in Freetown. Hear that their experiences, of course they're dead, they can't, but their families, their experiences are just being like, part of the but-um-dum of this story. As if none of the things are real that happened. And I spent 3 years researching that book. I've talked to families, I talked to police officers, I've talked to people who were there, and they still contact me. Like, that reputation and those moments are still very much alive for them. But they're just fake, right? They're just fake. He says it over and over again. It's just something that happened. Anyway, it was something that I felt needed to be said, and it was. I would love to have your ideas on this, because there's a difference between folklore moving the needle and adding something new to the story, and completely washing the story away for what you want. And I feel like it's a topic that we keep coming back to because it keeps being screwed up in a different way. This is different than the story we did on the Pukwudgies years ago on Spooky South Coast, the discussion of Rowling's massacre of the Pukwudgie story. This is different than even Tim and I's discussion on who owns legends. The fact of the matter is that we cover these topics and we go over them again because it says something about us. It says something about how we consume, how we learn to believe. And so it's worth doing it time and time again. But don't worry. My soapbox is now officially put down. I would love to hear your responses for it. You could hit me up on email at spookytripping@gmail.com. That phone number that I said, that 813-418-6822, that's open all the time. If it's not parents texting me to yell at me about how I'm teaching their kids, you can get your ideas on legends, or even your local legend. I had some people, especially on Instagram, that were sharing true crime stuff that I hadn't gone into yet. I would love to hear more about that. You can hit me up on that phone number at 813-418-6822, even when I'm not on the air, or email me at spookytripping@gmail.com. Or why don't you just send me a message on Instagram at spookytripping, or Twitter at spookybalzano, and feel free to find your way to our Facebook page, facebook.com/trippingonlegends. Everything we do eventually ends up on the Facebook page. And of course, if you are looking for not only Florida haunted legends and my crappy crap rambles about things having to do with folklore, but also really interesting folklore from around the world, you can go to the actual Tripping on Legends webpage. Yes, we actually do have a website, which is trippingonlegends.com. Please make sure you subscribe to this show anywhere where you get your podcast. You're going to really want to follow me going into holiday season. And of course, here, holiday season is Halloween season, because there are some amazing events and some amazing little twists and little fun things that I'm working on. I've got some interesting things I've never done before planned for the next month and a half too. So you're going to want to keep in touch with us and stay in touch with us so that you can kind of experience Tripping on Legends different ways as we embrace not just pumpkin spice, but all things that are spooky. My name is Christopher Balzano. Here's hoping that all of your trips